Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jim Simmons with Smokin' Simmons Barbecue. Today, we're going to be preparing a brisket, which is looks like it's going to be a 14-pounder USDA prime brisket, one of the best you can get aside from Wagyu. Picked this up from Sam's Club, and what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how I trim it. Then we're going to season it. It's going to sit in the fridge overnight, and then tomorrow morning it'll go right on the smoker. So let's get started. All right, guys, I decided to speed this part up here. This is just for learning how to trim a brisket. I didn't think you needed to sit here for the entire 12 minutes. Right now I'm just kind of opening it up. I'm making sure that I'm starting with the beef side, or I'm sorry, the meat side as opposed to the fat side. And basically you want to make sure you get rid of the major chunks of fat, like this one right here. It's really, really hard. It's never going to render down. So you want to trim all that out of there. Anything that's really, really hard fat, you just get rid of it because it'll never melt. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to appearance, you eat with your eyes first. So you really want to make sure that it looks good and pleasing to the eye before you even take a bite out of it. So what I'm doing here is just basically, like I said, removing some of the hard stuff, getting rid of some of the silver skin. This little chunk right here, it's just going to crisp up and burn. You don't want anything any flaps that are hanging around, because it will just get overcooked way too quickly. And you want a more streamlined, more aerodynamic, hunk of meat sitting on your smoker. And here I'm just removing all the silver skin, or at least most of it, any of the loose fat that won't really melt away. This brisket, I got really lucky and it didn't have a whole lot of silver skin on it, so just trimming it away here. All right, now on this fat side, you want to make sure that you've got at least 2 inches of a flat. Otherwise, anything thinner than that will burn and cook too soon. It'll dry out. So I made sure whenever I bought this brisket that the fat was, the flat side was as thick as possible. With this chunk here, again, it's a big piece of decal fat, which again it's solid. It's really, really hard. And it will never render down, so I'm removing that as well. I'm also going to be trimming some of the flat, and kind of making it more streamlined. Now it looks like this flat does have a pretty thick fat layer, which is great. You still want to trim it down to about a 1/2 inch. Not really any closer than that, but you see I'm kind of trimming up some of the oxidation piece. Wow, look at that marbling. That is just beautiful. That's what you get with a prime brisket. And just removing some more fat here that is just not going to render down. It's always good to have too much fat that you can trim away versus not enough, and then you've got a lot of bald spots that really will just crust up and not give you the bark that you're looking for. It'll dry out that part of the meat. And it also helps if you stick your hand underneath the brisket. It bends it up so you can cut it a little easier. A little safer that way too, so you don't cut your fingers. This knife is very sharp. It's got me a couple of times before this video. Now this is where I'm going to be tapering it off, getting rid of the really, really thin parts. You can always save these pieces. Most people like to save them for sausage, or again, rendering it down so that you can create your own beef tallow. I don't. I've got a lot of it in my fridge already, and I don't have a sausage maker, so I have no use for that part. And now I'm just kind of getting rid of this little mohawk on top of the brisket. It looks nice, but again, this will just overcook while you're smoking it, and no one's going to want to eat this part. It's going to be too tough, so you might as well get rid of it now. Other than that, this brisket actually looked pretty good for me. It didn't need a whole lot of trimming. This is one of the lighter trims. I did put this brisket in the freezer for about 20 minutes before I started this video, so it firmed up the fat and made it a lot easier to trim down. Here I'm just kind of getting rid of some more oxidized parts of the brisket because it just doesn't look good, and it will never finish looking good either. There's another big chunk of the decal fat that is just not going to render down. So even though when you're at the store and you're buying a 15, 16 pound brisket, you're not cooking a 16 pound brisket. You're going to end up trimming off a good 3, 4, maybe even 5 pounds of just these, you know, the scraps, or most of it's just going to be the fat. So you're definitely losing some poundage, but you're also decreasing the amount of time that you take to smoke it. And now we're getting ready to season it. So I've come up with this mix of about a 1/4 cup of pickle juice and about a 1/2 cup of mustard, just to kind of give it like a thick soup consistency. And we're going to spread that around. The mustard, you know, this is basically just a binder for the rub. You see my dog Teddy in the background. He smells it and he wants a piece of this, but sorry kid, you're not going to have any. And basically the mustard acts as a binder. The pickle juice acts almost like a tenderizer. You know, the vinegar in it will definitely tenderize some of the meat, especially for this marinade. I'm going to be letting it sit for overnight. So I'm just making sure that I get it completely covered. And again, you will never taste the mustard, so don't even worry about that. Looks like we're done. All right, hands are all clean. What we're gonna do is, obviously this is gonna be the presentation side, so we wanna season that last. So let's flip it over. I'll try my best to do this with one hand. It's a big hunk of meat. All right, now for the rub. This is my top secret rub. I don't know if you can see it, but it says top secret rub. The reason why it's secret is because I've spent many, many hours, days, weeks worth of researching YouTube videos, finding the perfect rub consistency. But I will give you some tips that any rub that you make, you can't go wrong with salt, pepper, garlic. In most instances, it's 1 part salt to 2 parts pepper, black pepper. Obviously, let me strike that back. 1 part kosher salt, not table salt, and 2 parts ground pepper, restaurant quality or restaurant size, coarse grain, and then a 1/2 part of garlic powder, granulated garlic. That's the main ingredients. I've added a few other things in here, a little bit of Lowry's seasoned salt as well, but a couple other things just to kind of make it my own. However, feel free to find any rub that you like, but you always want to make sure that you do it liberally. It's a big hunk of meat. You can't over season it, especially if the salt to pepper ratio is 1/2 of the pepper. So 1 part salt, 2 parts pepper. You will never over salt it. Now, I'm going to make a little bit of a mess here, but I don't care because I'm going to end up cleaning it anyway. Let me change the opening here. There we go. Speed this up. Oh yeah, much better. Now typically, if you're not going to let this sit overnight like I am, you at least want to give this, I want to say, a good 30 minutes to really stick in it here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the sides here. Then I'm going to let this sit for a good 30 minutes anyway before I flip, because I don't want my seasoning to just dump off on the bottom when I flip it. But again, that's why you have the mustard binder, because it sticks. All right, don't be afraid to pat it in. It's a rub, do not rub it in. Even though it's called a rub, you never want to rub it in because you end up rubbing it right off. See any damp spots here? Go ahead and cover them a little bit more, pat it in. All right, folks, I'm gonna go ahead, let this rest a little bit, soak it in. What the salt's gonna do is actually bring out the moisture, and then the moisture is gonna suck right back in and bring the salt and the seasonings back into the brisket. I'll be back with you in about 30 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. As you can tell, it's definitely soaked in. There's no loose particles that will fall off. I'm gonna go ahead and flip her over. Okay, maybe some fell off, but the majority of it stayed on. I really don't want to pick this up. There we go. All right, now let's do the rest. And this amount of seasoning here, especially the black pepper, that's what's going to actually generate and create the bark for you. Because when you put a bunch of black pepper in some smoke, it actually mellows out the flavor, so it's not going to be spicy or anything crazy, and it's going to come out looking like a meteorite. That's when you know that you've got beautiful bark built up. Let's make sure that's covered. And again, you are going to make a mess on whatever table you're on, but don't worry about it. It'll be worth it. Okay, let's get this corner. All right, I am happy with this. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna put this in the fridge overnight. I'm gonna wake up at about, well, probably about 5 a.m. Get the smoker going. Gonna bring it up to 275. I'm gonna use some post oak. Move the camera up for me, please, Ethan. Good? All right. So, like I said, 275 over some post oak. It's going to be about, I want to say maybe good 8 to 10 hours. So that's why I'm going to try to get it on around 6 a.m. But next time you see me, I'll be putting it on the grill. See you soon. All right, we are back, folks. It is now 6 a.m. on the very next morning. I just put her on. Take a quick look at her, because I won't be lifting this lid for about another 4 or 5 hours. Now, I did have to put a piece of smoking wood underneath the middle of it, because you know your brisket's going to be huge if it barely fits on your acorn. All right, we'll check on her in about 4 or 5 hours. All right, it has now been 4 hours. Pretty sure this is gonna go another 4 at least. Let's go ahead and take a peek. I'm gonna throw a probe in as well. And you wanna burp it so that you don't create more heat. Wow, look at that bark. It's definitely shrunk up enough. I think I can probably pull that piece of wood out for sure. There we go. Yeah. Little crust action there. Otherwise, looking really good. I'm gonna go ahead and put a probe in the flat end. Start measuring that. And we'll check on it when it gets around maybe 170. Now we have hit the 5 hour mark, and she's temping right around 175, so that's like the perfect time for a stall. Typically what we would now do is wrap it in butcher paper and spread out some Wagyu beef tallow. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to soften the bark just a little bit, keep it from burning while we finish it up to 205 degrees after we wrap and put it back on the smoker. But I got a curveball. Instead of the beef tallow, I figured why not use ghee. This is clarified butter. So a lot of you are thinking like, I'm not too sure about this. Well, think of it like this. Whenever you have a really good steak cast iron skillet finished steak with when you're butter basting it with garlic and rosemary, and you're just spooning that butter on top of the steak, and how much better that steak tastes. Now imagine that on a brisket. So that's exactly what I did here. I spread out a bunch of the ghee here. What I'm gonna do now is wrap it all up, put it back on the smoker, let it finish until around 203, 205, and then we're gonna let it rest. I wanna show you how to wrap it. So, very important here that you wrap it nice and tight. What I'm gonna do, fold this over. I'm gonna do fold it once, like that. Tuck in the sides, make sure you crease it. I'm gonna pull it on back in the camera. And we want to tuck and crease, just like so. And make a little brisket pocket. Just like that. Now, actually, let's unfold it for just a second. Pull this in. Last, give it that one flip at the end. And there you go. Perfect little brisket packet. Now it's going back out to the grill. All right, we are back. We're right at that 7-hour mark. My timer just went off. We hit, or not timer, but my thermometer just went off, and we hit 205. So now, before we put this in a cooler and let it rest for quite a few hours, we want to make sure it's probe tender. So we know that the temperature is hit, but you don't always go off the temperature. You got to make sure it goes in like it's like a hot knife through butter. So let's give that a shot. Time to unveil the package. Wow. One more. Unroll here. This is the kind of moisture people dream about right here. Ah, it's so hot. One more flip. There we go. Wow. Look at this jiggle. Look at that. That's what you're looking for with a brisket. All right, let's just see. Probing like butter. Whoa. Absolutely incredible. All right. This is begging to go in that cooler. It is ready to go. So, let's wrap this back up, just like we had it. Cool. And one more of these. Nope, don't want that. And just like that. One more thing. I'm gonna let this sit for about 5 or 10 minutes, just like this, before I put it in the cooler, because if I put it in there right now, it'll actually continue to cook, and there's a chance that you can actually overcook it. So I'm gonna let this come down to temperature, maybe about 15, 20 degrees, but obviously well above the food safe temperature of 140. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the cooler. Just wanna let you know. All right, folks, now is the time. We get to unwrap it, slice it up, see how we did. Here we go. Now I did double wrap this just so that I didn't mess up the towels inside the cooler. Ooh, it is very soft. Let's put this over here. Look at that. Unbelievable. Holy cow. Look at that jiggle. Ooh-wee, that's what you look for. Oops. Get rid of that. right down the middle first. Let's take a peek. Oh yeah, look at that. The juice is coming out of that. Beautiful. Okay, let's see if we can get a slice off. This is so tender, holy cow. Test it to see if it has the bend test. Well, that's without question. Look at that. Holy cow. All right. Looks like the fat rendered very nicely. Now let's take a piece off here. I'm going to do a pull test. Of course, little resistance comes right apart. Now the favorite part, the tested. So let me move the camera angle up a little bit. Very hard to do. There we go. All right. Moment of truth. Cheers, everybody. Unbelievable. Wow. It's just a flavor bomb. I can tell the difference between the ghee and the beef tallow. It's just a little more rich. Oh, this is absolutely killer. Wow. We've got a nice, I don't know if you can see it, a nice smoke ring here. Okay. Wow, unreal. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. We're looking to do a brisket. Follow these steps that I gave you. You really can't go wrong. Again, if you like what you see, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Until next time, see you guys later. And for those of you that like the waterfall test, oh yeah. Time to slice it on up. All right, I have taken this over to my neighbor's house. This is Joe. Say hi, Joe.
Hey, everybody.
I need his honest opinion. He's got a little bit of a history with Texas barbecue. Gave a little piece of the lean and the flat. Tell me what you think. Honest opinion.
That is fantastic.
Nice.
Great moisture, great ring, great smoky flavor.
Nice.
Knocked out of the park again, Jim.